Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I'm your host, Beth Stallwood, founder of Create WorkJoy. Today I am joined by Jessie Hartshorn, and Jessie is an illustrator who does amazing work with museums, with galleries, using her unique illustration style to tell stories. And it's a really interesting conversation about kind of the artistic mind, reconnecting with the stuff that you trained in, that you love, bringing together what you love and what you've worked on to create a business that really works for you, that creates some work joy in your life. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. Today I am joined by Jessica Hartshorn, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. But rather than me introduce her, Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Beth. I'm Jessica Hartshorn. I'm based in Rugby, and I'm an illustrator who particularly specialises in working with museums and galleries.
Wow, that's a really cool job, and one you never really think about, right? Like, museums and galleries are just there. They're there doing stuff. I've never really thought about an illustrator working with them. So tell us a little bit about, how did you become an illustrator?
So I actually trained as an illustrator a long time ago, sort of way back in the sort of 1999, I think I was at university, so a little while ago now. I've always loved art. And after I graduated, I did do some illustrations for about a year, but quite quickly ended up getting a job in galleries and museums. So I worked as an apprentice initially for a gallery in Milton Keynes, and loved working in sort of creative spaces. I was focusing more on education, so I was sort of the education officer, and just really loved engaging people in the arts. So I felt I was still being creative in some way, but it was more about sort of enabling other people to be creative and working alongside artists. So I actually did that for nearly 17 years, sort of moving my way up the ranks and moving on to different galleries and museums. After about 17 years in the industry, as much as I absolutely loved it, I did start to miss that sort of creativity myself, and, creating and making things myself. So I did start to just paint, sort of in the evenings when I got home from my job. I'd pick up the paints and started to just play. And that was a key element really for me, because a friend had just created her own creative business and given up her job, and I was saying, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm not quite sure. And she said, just give yourself permission to play, just experiment and see what you want to do, because I hadn't painted properly for a really long time. So I did that, and I set up an Instagram account, a secret one. Nobody knew at all that nobody knew I'd set this Instagram account up, and I just posted my illustrations. A really important thing, I think, looking back, was I set myself a goal of trying to post at least 2 illustrations a week on there. So that kind of really gave me that incentive to keep making. And it was just a bit of a confidence boost, I suppose, when people started liking and commenting, knowing that nobody knew me. They didn't know it was me. So it wasn't, friends or family. It was genuine people that wanted to follow me. So after a little while, I did start to think, oh, maybe I could do this. And started to look for jobs. But I was, if I'm honest, looking more for jobs that were similar to the job that I was doing in gallery education. So when I did leave my job, I was sort of focused more on working in gallery education. But as museums and galleries saw my Instagram and saw that I could do the artwork as well, I sort of realised that there was a bit of a niche for people that had the experience of working in galleries and museums and creating sort of education trails and content, but then also doing the illustration as well, and having that kind of key understanding of how galleries and museums work and what collections are, and all those kind of behind the scenes things. I had the background knowledge of both. So that's kind of how it all started, really. And like a lot of things, as I carried on posting on Instagram, but more of the museum and gallery work, and people started to see that, and I had a lot of sort of referrals. I also sort of applied for things, and I suppose like anything, the more work I produced and the bigger body of portfolio I had, I was enabled then to get more work, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Wow. So in some ways, kind of 17 years later, going back to where you started, but in a different way.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think, I wouldn't change a thing because I love my time in museums, and I think it really gave me a good network of people, because I could send my portfolio out to people that I knew, and like a lot of people, I suppose, I just had work experience and understanding how museums worked, and also the networks that people are part of. So I started to talk at conferences, museum conferences, and just had an awareness of kind of how to reach the audience.
Yeah, because you've been there and been part of it. So that
Yeah,
experience
absolutely.
really, really helped there. So I have like about a million questions for you. I'm not going to ask more because we haven't got all day, but I'm going to ask you a few questions about that kind of this really interesting career. And I'm going to start with this. I'm going to go way, 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 way back. So you said that you loved art and you trained in it. What is it? Well, what was it back then when you were kind of in your teenage years and thinking about what to go and do and what to study that got you into art in the first
I think right from being small, my dad loved to paint, and he didn't have a job in art or anything, but he always said he wished he'd gone to art college. So I suppose I had that influence a little bit, that when I was growing up, there was that encouragement to be creative.
Yeah.
But I'm quite a strong believer that if you're really passionate and enjoy something, you naturally do more of it, which then makes you better. That practice kind of makes perfect sort of thing. So I think, the more you practice something, the better you get at it. And I suppose I had a really good art teacher actually at school, and again, I think he saw the potential in my work and would always encourage me and show me sort of other inspiring artists' work. But I was very much like a lot of people, I think, and hopefully it's changed now, told that there wasn't really a job in the arts. Maybe you could be a graphic designer because they get paid. That's what I was told. But I didn't even know an illustrator existed, I suppose, as a job when I was a teenager. But so I thought maybe being a teacher might be something, like an art teacher. Or an artist. So when I did work in galleries and museums, that was great because I was kind of doing a bit of that, but in not a school setting, which is what I didn't want to do. But yeah, in terms of illustration, when I went to art college, we got to try everything, and illustration was something that was just really playful. It kind of suited my style. I just really loved it. For me, the heart of illustration is that visual narrative, so helping to tell stories through pictures, and that's something that I just really enjoy. And that really appealed to me. So I think as soon as I saw that was a possibility of a job, then I was just sort of, let's do that.
It's so funny because I was sitting here smiling from ear to ear about the careers advice that you got. And so I'm somebody who went to university and did a music degree, and the careers advice is, well, you can be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you sure that's the only thing you can possibly be? I've just spent the last 3 years studying. So I really, really, really hope that it's not like that anymore for the careers advice. For me. But I think there is something there about, I totally believe, and I again smiling at the idea that actually if you really enjoy something, you will practice at it, and then you'll get good at it, and then you'll enjoy it and be good at it. And those two things are lovely to experience, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think whatever you do, I teach a lot of drawing. I still do bits of teaching, more as sort of one-off workshops and things. And I'm a really strong believer in drawing, in the sense of anyone can long-term draw in the same way you learn to write. If you practice with your left hand, you can't do it very well, but you can, or depending on what hand you can write with. But, the opposite hand, you've not had the same amount of practice at writing, and drawing is exactly the same. The more you practice, the better you get at it. There's, some people do have maybe a natural incline to it, but I think everyone can learn elements and techniques. It's just if they're not interested, they'll not, keep practicing. So I think that's part of the key, isn't it?
It totally is. And I think in the world where we kind of see the results of things versus the hard work that goes into things, because if you think about social media, obviously your Instagram's amazing and you have all of these people commenting on it, people don't necessarily see all the years of practice and working through it and learning it that go into it. And therefore, I think a lot of people assume that you would have, like, it's like a natural talent. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't know how to do it now, you'll never know how to do it. But actually, you can really learn pretty much anything, can't you, if you put the time and effort and energy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I do teach a lot of adults, and I'm working with a group of adults with dementia at the moment. And I think a lot of it is going back to sort of playing a bit, like I was saying earlier, that playfulness of not having preconceived ideas of making something very finished, so to speak, and just exploring what materials can do, and building your confidence right from a base level, a little bit like building a brick wall, I suppose, starting with that bottom layer of actually just getting your confidence of creating and making and playing with materials, and then slowly building up the techniques. I think a lot of people think they've got to be Van Gogh on their first day, and that's just not going to happen. So I think that fear factor for a lot of people, I think, and a lot of that I think is to do with old-fashioned teaching in schools of this is how you draw this apple, and that's it. That's the only way you can do it. And I think I'm glad to see a lot of schools have changed that perspective of showing that lots of different styles are okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think I was ever very, I was creative but not artistic, is probably how I would describe myself. So, in the musical world, in drama and all that kind of stuff, I would describe myself as creative, but I was never what you say good at art as a subject. But over the last few years, actually encouraged by some great other people, I've started to engage in that side of my brain and use it a little bit more. And one of the things I started doing, especially for things like these podcasts, is to do some more visually engaging notes from them.
Yeah.
So they're not by no means perfectly artistic, and there are a lot of words as well as artistic things, but you like bringing in some color, bringing in some icons, and actually just doing it and using it, and not trying to make it perfect and not trying to make it good, just doing it for my own brain because I like to see things in bright colors, has been a really interesting process.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I learned when I was working in the galleries, actually, is that the processes can be just as important as the final outcome, like how you got there, that journey. And definitely when we were showing artwork as well, we used to like to show people sketchbooks and processes of experimenting, because that is interesting as well for people to see and understand. And I think that can help to build confidence, because if they just see a final piece that's amazing, and they go, oh, wow, that person's so talented, yet they then see this sort of maybe 6 months of how they got to that, of things going wrong, and trying lots of different things and lots of drawings first. Again, it can build people's confidence, that it's not just an hour in the studio to create a masterpiece.
I also think it's an interesting thing, and thinking about the world as it is and how we are. I think, and I might be wrong here because I have no evidence to support this other than just what I think, that the world's becoming more and more in need of visual stuff. Like, we have less time, we concentrate on things for less time. So having something that's visually engaging, that kind of captures our imagination, that tells the story in a picture. You think about like the whole purpose of like Instagram and things like that. That's all about, what are you telling the story around a picture.
Yeah,
so I think the world is in need of artistic skills more than ever, probably.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also with more understanding of different people's learning styles, I think, I'm very much a visual learner. And when I was at school and I was revising, I used to draw, even in science or whatever, I would draw little pictures next to each thing, and I would remember the pictures more than the words. So that would really help me revise. And I did quite well in my exams
Well done.
as a result of it, I think. So I think the more we understand how people learn, to have an option of visual aids in whatever you do is really important. And I think that's where a lot of my work comes in for galleries and museums, because often what I'm doing is creating visual aids to help people understand the context of the collections, or if it's a map, for example, to bring to life some of the kind of spaces that if somebody just looked at something that was quite plain with just text on, it wouldn't then perhaps wouldn't feel as engaged in that environment in the same way. So
Yeah.
that's where I kind of see that importance for the illustration I do.
And one of the things I really love about your career story is maybe the idea that you never really planned to be doing exactly the work you're doing now, but it was part of the exploration and development of your career in museums and doing stuff outside of work, doing your playful art outside of work that suddenly came together. And I, talk a lot about the fact that work isn't separate from life. Life is a big thing and work is part of it. But actually what you've joined together is kind of the thing that you loved, your playful, fun, doing it for yourself, love just for the sake of it, and bringing that together with your kind of working life and combining those things has created a whole new business for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's never the intention for, and I think, I've said this to you before, that when I was leaving my job at the museum, a colleague said to me, because at that point I had been doing illustrations and I had had a couple of commissions, and I painted quite a big mural, which was in quite an iconic gallery in the West Midlands. So I think it was probably about a year after I'd started drawing, and I was just about to kind of leave. And they said to me, are you leaving to do your illustration? And I sort of laughed and went, oh no, I'm just going to carry on. Because at that point, I still perhaps didn't see the options or think I would earn enough money perhaps to do that, or that there'd be enough work in that. So I kind of, at that point, I don't think I totally ruled it out, but I'm not, the aim of leaving wasn't to purely do that. It was to carry on to do education work as projects and things in museums. But very, very quickly, really, a few people had seen what I'd been doing on Instagram and sort of tied the two things together, really. And it all snowballed from there.
It's amazing, isn't it, that these things like, and I wonder, do you remember the moment where you suddenly started to believe it, that it could be?
Yeah, I think well, there was one project where I'd been commissioned to create an education pack for a London museum and gallery, and when I went for the interview, they didn't know I could do illustration, so I went for the interview just to do the kind of content. But when I was there, I showed them some of the work that I'd done, and I sort of said, within the budget, I will just add some illustrations. So it's kind of a freebie, I suppose, for them. But they love them. And then since then, I've had loads of just purely illustration based work as a result of doing that kind of freebie. So that was kind of part of the start of it really snowballing. And when it clicked that actually I could do this. I'd done some other smaller bits for other museums, but that was kind of quite a big project that was specific to museums. And then after that, I actually applied to the Arts Council to do a year-long project with an organisation called Sporting Heritage, who work with over 50 museums across the UK. And we got the money, which is quite, it's quite difficult, particularly in the current climate, to get. And that meant that I was like an artist in residence for a year. Working with these 50 museums. So that was just an amazing learning curve, and enabled me to build my network even further. And as a result of that, I then started to be asked to conferences and other things to speak about this sort of area of specialism. So I think those two kind of moments, one getting the funding, almost that the Arts Council believed in me, that I could do this and take it forward, but also that very first kind of just offering up that I could do this as a combination. That was the first time I'd really done that. Even though at the time it was a freebie, it was definitely kind of worth it because it was almost like to trial it.
Yeah.
That was probably the other moment.
It's the believe in yourself and saying you actually can do this stuff and putting it out there, and kind of that scary moment, even if you're offering it for free and kind of going,
yeah,
absolutely.
I wonder if
they might not take me up on this. And then the power of someone else believing in you as well, like the Arts Council kind of going, yeah, do you know what? Let's put some money into this, let's fund this and see where it goes. And I often think that that combination is really powerful. You kind of have to do something yourself to
Yeah.
make it happen, and someone else kind of saying, yeah, you're doing a good job here. And I'm really interested as well in that kind of network building part of working on things. And I think your network is so important for whatever career you work in. But obviously, when you're stepping into maybe a slightly different niche of the world you've already been in, expanding your network is such an important thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I realised I did a bit of research, as you know, hopefully we all should do, around other illustrators that specialise in this area, and there wasn't that many. There are others, but not huge numbers. So I did kind of sort of look at what they did, and look at the kind of recipe that they have, and just make sure that I was quite different, which I was. So yeah, I mean, sort of I looked at that element, and then in terms of networking, it did mean that I had an understanding of what else was out there and how I could kind of market myself slightly differently, but make sure I fulfilled the needs of what galleries and museums needed.
Love it. So now, a few years on into your world, are you in how are you managing to kind of maintain that? Are you growing? Is there loads of exciting projects that you're working on? Yeah, tell us a little bit now you're here, now you've made it happen.
Yeah, so I'm just at the next I feel like I'm at the next stage, because I have still been doing elements of just kind of education work that hasn't had illustration as well. But I am at that point now where I'm trying to pull back from that and just really focus on either purely illustration or doing that combination of the two, and only taking on projects where I am, doing illustration as part of that combination, or just illustration. So I'm sort of growing that side of the business more, and kind of, I suppose maybe over time you just start to realize the key areas that you really want to work in, and start to drop off the things that you're not as fussed about. So I think that's the point that I'm at the moment. In terms of projects, I think next week we're launching quite a big project I've been working on with Sporting Heritage, which is the A to Z of sporting objects. So we've worked with lots of museums across the country, and they've put forward an object with a letter, and I've sort of illustrated that and worked with their sports education officer, and he's written lots of text to go with each illustration. So that's really nice, quite a big project that we'll be launching next week. And I've also, sort of outside the museum sector, I've worked on a book. It's actually a poetry book for an organisation who focus on children with SEND needs. So they've got all the poems, and I've illustrated the sort of front cover and all the content. So that'll be launching in the next few weeks as well. So that's quite exciting.
So some big things coming up.
Yeah, and then just other sort of projects coming up. There's quite a few things linked to the Queen's Jubilee, which is quite exciting. And I am doing quite a lot of workshops as well. So sort of, I have enjoyed that aspect of it, in the sense of going out and working with the community and schools, because it can be quite lonely just being at home all the time. So I have tried to have a balance of doing my illustration and then doing a few workshops, sometimes once or twice a week. It's been quite nice.
Lovely. So kind of a nice rounded different things to keep you entertained in different ways, and more and more focus on the
social side.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And so tell me a little bit about, if people are, I mean, we obviously don't have time to give a full workshop in this call, and we'd probably want to do it more visually than just on sound if we were going to do it. But I'd love to know if people are interested in kind of maybe reigniting a passion for drawing or painting or art in any of its many, many different forms, or if they've never done it before, how might people go about just getting started and getting playful with it?
I think it depends on the level. So the total beginners, I would suggest signing up to either a class, or there's lots on YouTube nowadays. So in lockdown, I created a whole range of YouTube videos on drawing, and that was mainly aimed at children actually. But saying that, there are so many videos online now. So it might be that you just dedicate either an hour a week or a little slot of time. And I'd suggest going on YouTube and just Googling or sort of searching the sorts of things that you're interested in. So it could be flowers, for example, how to draw flowers, and just seeing what's out there. I think that's a really kind of light touch way of getting started. Buy yourself a nice little sketchbook and a nice pencil, so you feel like you've got something special to work with.
Yeah, you will always get me with any stationery commission.
Yeah, any stationery.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Done.
It makes it a
nice
special
pencil done.
And maybe start there, just because I think that's quite an easy. It's not scary. If you don't like something, you can stop it and start it and pause it, but also you can try something else if it's not working for you. And then the next step I'd say is to join a class or some sort of course or group. I think there are quite a few community groups out there where it's a little bit less scary and intense, where maybe an artist like myself might go in and run sort of one-off activities and drawing workshops. But then there's also the more sort of higher education-y or adult education-y ones where you book on for sort of terms. So I think that's one way. Another approach, perhaps if you're a bit more confident, would be, I would always suggest getting a sketchbook and maybe picking a topic or a theme. And so you might have a challenge. So it might be, every day for 2 weeks, I'm going to draw something out of my window, or what I have for lunch, or whatever interests you. But just kind of setting yourself a goal, I suppose, just like your business, really, setting yourself a goal of what you want to achieve, and just having a play and not putting too much pressure on yourself. Again, there's lots of things online, I think, to give you ideas. When I first started my Instagram account, there was lots of challenges on Instagram. So it might be, say, draw this in your own style. So it might be, I don't know, an animal or a person, and then you would upload that, and then that would kind of get circulated, and the artist that created the challenge would share yours and everybody else's, and it was just a really nice community thing. And that, for me, that was a really good way of helping me to do these 2 drawings a week, because if I wasn't sure what to do, I would look for these challenges, and it just made me feel part of a community as well. So I think if you've got a bit more confidence, that's quite a good thing to kind of link in with.
Yeah, and maybe build up to that as well. If you're going to do some of the other stuff, you can always, that's always an option in the future, isn't it? To go and have a little look and do it. And that, I'm really interested to hear as well about that power of the community and other people who are doing it and in the same position as you. When you first started back out on this journey, and I'm going to say you didn't start from zero, because obviously you have history with artistic skills, but when you were there, how important was it to have other people and to kind of be in that community sense?
Yeah, really important, actually, because I suppose in this new world of being online, you don't know who people are, and that kind of gives you a bit more confidence that most people are hopefully commenting because they do actually like your work, but also just kind of, I suppose, that incentive to keep going. And also later on, I found other groups that were more sort of support groups, in the sense of, what materials do you use and where can I get this from? And I think it can be quite isolating being at home. So to have other people to be able to kind of share and bounce ideas off of, especially sort of thinking back to when I was at university, we used to work in a studio together, and you could always share and bounce ideas, ask for criticism, or what do you think of these 2 colours if I do 2 colourways, and all those sorts of things. Some of these groups, you can do that. You can sort of put your work on there and go, what do you think, which one do you like best, and that was really useful.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, because often in creativity, we need other people's perspectives on things, don't we? Whether it's, work-based creativity or art-based creativity or any kind of other creativity, getting more than our own individual perspective on something can be very valuable.
Yeah, it's particularly for clients. So my my husband's not creative at all, bless him. But that actually is to my advantage, because I almost sort of say it's like the layman's view of what the artwork's going to look like. So when I'm working on things for clients, I'll often show him, and if he doesn't quite say, he might go, "What, what's that bit there?" Or is that meant to be like that? Or so if you do it yourself, you know what you're doing, you know what that's meant to be. And sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are as an artist or illustrator, something might not quite look right and you haven't picked it up. So to show him is really useful. And yeah, he'll be really honest with me as well, which is what I need. So I can then go back and make changes before it gets to the client. So yeah, that's really helpful.
They're a good. My husband often gets used for a proofread of documents before I go no, because it comes a while if you've read them like 4 times and you have no idea that you spelled something wrong because you've read it so many times. So totally get that. Very useful people to have around. Another angle I just wanted to go for a minute is often people talk about this idea that kind of if you work doing what you love, it doesn't feel like work and it's all amazing and magic. And I don't particularly buy into that, because I think even when you're doing stuff you love, it's still work. There's still hard work stuff that goes on to it. So tell me a little bit about that transition from being an employee to kind of working for yourself and working on your own thing, and the highs and the lows of it, if you can.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel really strongly about this, and I know there's been a lot of campaigns the last few years to say, art is work. I've paid a lot of money to go to university to study illustration. I've got years of experience. I bring a lot to it. I have to pay public liability insurance. All these things add up. And it is really frustrating to be asked to, say, work for a week. I've been asked to work for a week before for voluntary, to do a big mural, and to pay for my own materials as well. And I just think you would never ask a builder to, well, unless it's DIY SOS, you would never ask a builder to, build a house for you for free. And I just think, as an illustrator and other artists are skilled people, and they're doing a job that most people can't do. That's why they're being asked to do it. So there needs to be a value put on that. I think it's getting better, and I think actually my experience working in the cultural sector, sort of commissioning artists, I've got a better understanding of that. And I was, if you work in the sector, you feel very a lot of pride in making sure you pay the right amount of money that's suggested by the Arts Council for artists. So I think people in the sector know. It tends to be people that aren't in the cultural sector, that maybe are in the business sector or voluntary sector, that ask for things to be done for free. And I think a lot of artists will do elements. I do charity. I choose a few things a year that I will do for free based on what I believe in, or maybe certain things that are close to me. But I'm quite strict with that, and I've had to over the years. But also, if I'm really busy and I'm being paid for my days, then I can't really sort of say, well, I'll have a week off to do this for free. It's just, and it's, I suppose, as I've got busier, it's made it easier to say no, because I'm already busy, and I know, other people will value what I do. And I've heard this so many times before, that the people that pay the least, are often the most hassle. And I've definitely found that. So, I think that's also made it easier over the years to think, this might not be worth touching with a barge pole. So, yeah, I think that's how I feel. I've also, and this can happen quite often with art, is being asked to create work. So, for example, this happened recently linked to the Jubilee. Somebody wanted multiple artists to create work to show them, linked to the Jubilee, and they would choose the best. And again, you'd never ask 3 builders to build you a wall, and then they decide who they're going to take on. They just wouldn't do it. They look at your past work, and that's what should happen. So, you sort of, it is that sort of slightly unrealistic expectations of, like you say, because you love it, that's okay. But there are a lot of other people that love their work, and they still get paid properly. So it's just kind of valuing the arts. Once it's valued properly across the board, then actually better work will be produced. Because unfortunately what can happen is a lot of I don't sound patronizing, but a lot of amateur artists that still might be super talented, but just pick things up now and again and actually don't earn their main living from it, and will do things for free. And then that's why it then gets a bit squiffy, because people that are asking will go, well, so and so's done it for free, and it makes it tricky. I think, and that will always happen, I suppose, in the cultural sector, whether it's musicians or dancers or artists.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And
yeah,
it's such a good point to remember that your work has value. It has value and it is valued. But the people who only want to say it's valued, not actually value it. It's a really interesting one. And similar things like I do a lot of speaking gigs, and there are always people who want you to do a speaking gig for free, and it's like, okay, but this has value to it. It is worthy of something. And like you, I choose a few things a year to go and do for free that are for good causes, that are things that I believe in and for people that I believe in and all that kind of stuff, versus just saying we'll do anything for free, because that does downvalue your work as well. It says that it's not worthy of that, and your work totally is worthy of it.
And I think there's all the other aspects, isn't there, when you're working for yourself, that you do have to pay, that are behind the scenes and that people don't see. Your website and your insurance and your materials, and there's so much that you have to do to just keep yourself going as a business. And again, I think people don't quite appreciate that sometimes. So I think for me, it's made it easier because I also produce my own sort of branded illustrations. So I've got my company name, so to speak, is Jessie Illustrates. And since I set that up, it's just make it a little bit easier, because it looks more as a business rather than just me as an individual. And therefore, when people approach me, I don't know, almost seeming like a business can make it look more valuable. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's like,
do you know what I'm trying to say?
What is out there in the world about your stuff that people can go and actually pay for, so they understand the value of what those things are. It's like your shop front, isn't it? It's like, this is the shop front, and I can do some special bespoke stuff for you as well, but this is also kind of a bit about my style. This is how much it's worth. You've got something there that kind of sets the tone.
Yeah,
definitely. Oh, so interesting. And I it's been so lovely talking to you around this stuff, because I think it is an important subject, like around art and artists and creativity, and how important that side of things is in our world and will continue to be as the world grows and continues and things change. I mean, gone are the days where it's okay to produce a Word document and send it out to clients. It's got to be something, it's got to be good looking, right? We've got to have graphic design, or it's got to have illustration, it's got to have something to do that visual storytelling that you were talking about earlier. But I'm going to move us on now, if it's okay with you, and I'm going to get into our quick fire questions round. Are you ready?
Yeah.
As ready as you'll ever be. Okay, question 1. What is always guaranteed to bring you a little bit of work joy?
I think opportunity to play. I think I've definitely learned that having that opportunity to play, especially when I get really stressed, I think I need to put a little bit of time next week to just do something for me, create some art for me, and to keep going back to that, because that's what grounds my work and is that authentic element of what I do.
I love that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you go into a world of doing what you love, you could end up just spending your entire time creating things for other people. But that reminding yourself to create something that's just for you, such an important thing to have. And whether you do work in the artistic world or whether you work as an accountant or in IT, what are you doing around the things that you love that are just for you? And I love this idea of, like, you can just play at something. You don't have to be good at it. I think for many years in my head, I associated being good with something as enjoying it, and vice versa. And what I've been rediscovering recently is things like playing the piano, and I'm totally rubbish at it. Like, honestly, awful at it. But it doesn't matter, because I'm just playing. And I gone are the days when I was a student at school and kind of it's you must practice practice, you must practice, you must practice
Yeah.
to pass an exam. And getting that out of my head took quite a long time. And getting into, I'm just playing for the fun of it. I'm just playing for me. I'm not playing for anybody else. It just quietens my mind. It's good to have my hands busy and my brain so concentrating on what the notes should be versus what I'm playing that I can't think about anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've signed up this year to do a few exhibitions, which is really nice because that gives me the impetus to play, in the sense that I can create something for me for the exhibitions. So yeah, that's quite exciting.
Ooh, very exciting. I have to see more about those. Right, question 2. What book are you currently reading?
I've literally just started the new Will Smith autobiography, which I'm literally just at the beginning, but I'm quite excited to read because during lockdown I watched he had a series on YouTube which was him writing it. I don't know if you're aware of that, which sort of showed the process, and it was quite traumatic actually for him, because he had quite a difficult past growing up with his family. So yeah, so I suppose I know elements of it because I saw elements of him writing it, but yeah, I'm quite excited to get into that. He's somebody that's excelled, I think, in his career, and he writes a lot about the kind of positive elements and the negative elements of that, being a perfectionist, which I think I am. I'm a perfectionist, so kind of relate to some of those elements. But what was really interesting watching the kind of creation of it was that he did include all the people in like sittings that are in the book. So like his family and friends, he got them to gather together and he read aspects of the book, just to make sure that they're all happy with everything. But also he talked about, which I never really thought about before, that kind of two-sided view of a situation, because obviously he was writing from his personal lived experience, where for the other people their experience of the situation may have been quite different. So yeah, I'm looking forward to carrying on with that.
Sounds great. I'm going to have to check out that YouTube series as well and see what that's like. Brilliant. Question 3. What is the best or most useful bit of information that someone has given you in your life, bit of advice, whatever it was, that you always find yourself coming back to?
I think one of the things I always come back to, and this has been throughout my life actually, or since probably university, is to be the best you can be, in the sense of not looking at others and trying to compare yourself to them, and trying to emulate what other people are, but to push myself to be the best me I can be, so within my parameters, but also still challenge myself. And I think that's in all aspects of my life, so not just my work, but when I'm exercising, I sort of try and push myself to do as much as I can. I think we've only got one life, and I do very much believe in trying to kind of live, not necessarily for the moment, but if you've got an opportunity to take it. I am a bit of a yes person, not in the sense of taking everything that necessarily I'm offered, but in the sense of, if there's an opportunity, I try not to be afraid, and go with the fear and do it anyway. And I think that's led me to have lots of experiences throughout my life that I wouldn't have done if I'd not taken those experiences, and led on to other opportunities as well.
That's interesting, isn't it? Like that, say yes to it, see what happens, and go with it, feel the fear, do it anyway, and see where it might lead you, versus kind of sitting back and going, oh, I'm a bit scared about that, I'm not going to do it because I'm too scared.
Yeah. And that definitely applies to work as well. There's been times when, like, for example, that very first mural that I did, way back when I was still working in the museum, in this big gallery, it was 4 13-meter walls, a massive space. I'd never done anything like that before, and I was petrified. And I was even like, do I do this application? But I really didn't think I'd get it, so I ended up just thinking, oh, do you know what, I'll put it in anyway. And then when I got offered it, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. But I did just go with it, and it was brilliant. And then I've been asked each year since, so I've done 3 now, in the same space, and each year it's got easier, and I'm pretty confident now in that space. So, you know, if I'd never put myself forward, I, you know, wouldn't have had, and that's led to a lot of other opportunities as well because of the profile of the space. So, you know, believe in the process, I suppose, is the other bit of advice. Or, you know, I try and just believe in and have faith in the process, even if it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Believe that it will.
It's such good advice, and I'm sitting here thinking about we often want to feel confident before we do stuff, but the process is actually what makes you confident. The process of doing it, of trying it, of working through it, of getting over the hurdles, of finding people who can help you, of pushing yourself. They're actually the things that build the confidence, not before you do it. The before you do it, but you're never going to feel confident. It doesn't work like that.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Next question. What is one super practical bit of advice to our listeners that's something that they could go and do today, tomorrow, the next day that you think would help build them a bit of work joy?
I think from my perspective, I mean, it might be different in different sectors, but especially if you're starting out, just doing a little bit of research on other kind of competitors and looking at what they do and what their recipe is for success, and sort of seeing if any of those things kind of emulate with yourself, or the things that you potentially could strive towards. So it's not talking about like copying someone else, but if there's someone that you sort of aspire to have similar business or work life or marketing or whatever, you know, there's someone that you, for example, on Instagram, there's a few people that when I was starting out that I followed, and I thought, oh, I really like, you know, what they're all about. I like their sort of graphics, I like their colour scheme, you know, I like how it all feels together. So doing a bit of research to just help me to kind of have some sort of aim, to some sort of goal of what I wanted to be, something similar to that, but obviously authentic to my brand and my style, but take elements of what they were doing. So yeah, sort of researching what other people do, because I think that will bring you joy in the sense of having a plan. And I don't know, I mean, the people that I follow, I suppose my brand is all about being positive, and I aim to make people smile. So I was following people that were similar, you know, that want to make you smile. So that obviously naturally brought me joy. And I suppose any other industry, finding what you really like about what you do, and then seeing what other people do, and seeing if you can add to that from what other people have got their sort of recipe for success.
It's really interesting. It's not about copying what they do. It's like, how have they gone about making it happen?
Yeah.
What's their process? What's their principles? How do they put themselves out there? And I always think that if you find a few people, you can get inspired by little bits of everyone, can't you? And then pull that together with your own style, with your own passion, with your own unique way of doing stuff, that you can then become your own version, but in a way that works for you, but is inspired and honors kind of other people's ways of working as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Such a good thing. And so often, like our research, we can go in the wrong direction here, which is where we research and then we spend our time comparing where we're at to where someone else is. And that comparatitis of life is a sure way to get unjoyful, to get really gloomy about stuff, because that person may have been doing it for 5 years longer than you have. You're not going to be in the same place, you're not going to have the same number of followers, but actually looking at them for the purposes of research, not comparison. I really like that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So what's going to happen now is that everybody who's listening is going to want to see your designs. They're going to want to see what it is that you do and your stuff. So where can people find out more about you?
Okay, so I'm on all social media, I think, or most social media. Instagram's probably the one that I'm sort of most active on. So you can follow me at Jessie_illustrates. And my website also has lots of different things, and you can obviously contact me on both. But my website is www.jessicahartshorn.com.
Hartshorn.com. What we will do is we will put all of the links into the show notes as well, so that everyone can just go and click straight from there, straight through to your Instagram and to your website. And I just want to say a huge thank you for coming on and talking about this subject. I get really passionate about talking about things like artistic stuff, and I really, I really value the artistic people in the world and how they bring everything together and do that amazing storytelling. So it's amazing talking to you. Thank you so much. And
You're so welcome.
I wish you to have such great projects that are coming up. How exciting to do the Jubilee and all kinds of different things. So have a great time. And by the time this comes out, some of those things may have happened. So we might be able to share some of them as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Jessie Hartshorn for joining me on this episode of the WorkJoy Jam. It's so interesting listening to people from a creative background, thinking about how, that careers advice 20 something years ago, similar to what I had, possibly didn't give us the full range of what's possible in careers, and how you can take some of these things, go in a different direction, reconnect, rediscover the things that really bring you that joy inside and outside of work. And that you can also connect with the joy in creating new and different types of work, in creating your own thing, your niche, finding a way to find your work joy in that way. I personally love listening to people who are in the artistic world, and I have gone and followed Jessie and her amazing illustrations, and she does some incredible work. And I think there is that need for us all to think about how visual we are and how important having visual storytellers in our worlds are. So whether you're in an organisation or you're working for yourself and you're looking at how do we bring something to life, potentially we need a little bit of art in our worlds. So thank you all for listening. We have many seasons now, 5 seasons of the WorkJoy Jam that you can go and listen to on your favourite podcast app. And we also have all of our social media, so do come follow us. And Club WorkJoy is in place, and Club WorkJoy is a great community of people who are all creating and cultivating joy in their working lives. We have guest speakers, we have events, we have networking, conversations, and it's a really great place to be. So if you're interested, head to our website, createworkjoy.com, and find out a little bit more. I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.